My brother, are you here?
I'm here.
Good to see you. Oh, yes, my boy.
Hey, how you doing?
Oh, you made it.
I made it.
Good to see
Thanks
you.
for waiting.
Good to see you. Yeah, brother. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here in New York. This is fascinating. It's. I remember seeing you in New York over 5 years ago when you came with Plum Village.
Right. We did the walking. We did the film.
The film, Thich Nhat Hanh's film.
Walk with me.
Walk with me.
Did you put that together?
Yeah.
At the museum. Right?
At the museum, the Rudin Museum. And it was good to see all the brothers from Plum Village, Dordogne, France, in New York, celebrating. I just want you to explain to us what brought you to New York and your reason for disrobing and your relationship.
Oh, yeah, in a few sentences.
In a few sentences, and we've got 33 seconds. If you can do that in 120 words or less.
Thanks for introducing. Thanks for welcoming me, Tracey. It's nice. I got a call. I was living in Vermont at this refuge, like a very small forest refuge with like 4 other monks up in Vermont in the forest. And I got a call from my good friend Shay. I don't think you've met Shay. Shay is a OI member, Order of Interbeing, also a student of Thich Nhat Hanh. He called me up and said, we're doing a week of protest for the climate at Extinction Rebellion. Is the group. I had heard a little bit about what they were doing in the UK, these protests with music and festival and shutting down the, not totally nonviolent, but like almost like a practice, like very aligned with Thay's teaching. And Thay was an activist. So, I mean, he is instrumental in stopping the Vietnam War, like his life on the line for that. I mean, grenades thrown into his room, and he was arrested. Sister Chan Khong was arrested for what they were printing peace stuff. So I was, and
Martin Luther King nominated him for the Nobel Peace
Prize, and also they had good connection. I mean, he was a big supporter of the civil rights movement, of course, too, in the U.S. So he and Dr. King had correspondence there. So when I heard this call, I was like, okay, that's why I actually stepped out of the monastery. This is it. This is the call. I just had this feeling in my body, like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. I was like, okay, I'll just go for a week. We'll see how it is. Came for a week. We did protests. I got arrested. First time. That was Times Square. We had a sailboat. We brought this sailboat into Times Square because we were like, look, people, this is going to be underwater in 100 years.
Yes. Well, if we're lucky.
If we're lucky. It could be sooner.
It could be sooner.
And so we were like, we have to do, so we had music, and we were doing sitting meditation essentially in Times Square, all the billboards and the people. That was before COVID. It's like thousands of people there.
Yeah. And
this was just, I mean, for me, it was a big, like, kind of opening. I can do engaged practice.
Engaged practice, which is very much part of Thay's practice.
So we're doing I'm doing walking meditation with handcuffs on. Right? You got me handcuffed, and I'm like, okay, I'm walking for my teacher here in the street. So it was just, that was, and then I came for a week, and I haven't left. That was 2 years ago.
Wow.
So,
amazing.
And all these different things have happened, but I realized, sometime in March, there were a couple things, is early this year, January, February, March, it was like, I'm wearing this robe, and I'm committed to this path of service and awakening. But the robe, in some ways, is a commitment to being in this monastic order in the monastery, And I found that I was limiting. I felt like there were some limitations on what I could do. It's like showing up as just a person. And culturally speaking, in the West, like people not being as familiar with monasticism. And so that plus, I fell in love.
You fell in love with a human, with a woman.
Complicated. I was like, whoa, that messes. That it was like, but here I am. I'm not in the community, which is that source of like relationship and me. And so I was like, it doesn't make sense for me to live a single life outside of the context of. I was like, wow. And plus I was doing all this trauma healing work, and the people I'm working with, I was seeing, like, they're all in relationships. I don't know anything about that.
Yes.
I'm clueless, right? I have no experience to, like, meet them. I was like, I got to do this. It's like just part of the path. So
now, when you
that's about as short as I can do it.
Yeah, but when you got here, when you were out here with Extinction Rebellion, were you thinking, I also want to find a partner, I also don't want to be alone, I want to find love?
It wasn't conscious.
It wasn't conscious.
It was in here. It was like waiting. You know, I think there was this seed there of like, I didn't expect that at all. Well, that's part of the practice too. Like, these unexpected things come up out of you, and what are we gonna do? How are you gonna meet that? Right? Are you gonna like run away? Like, oh gosh, I can't deal with that. Or I was like, this is it. And I was in January. I was up at Morning Sun Practice Center, and
Morning Sun Practice Center. What is that?
Morning Sun Practice Center is up in New Hampshire. It's started by 2 former monastics also who are now married and have family, and they started this practice center. Beautiful spot. I recommend that you go check it out. But I was up there doing a retreat, personal retreat, and all this was coming up, and I went out, and we're going out onto the ice. It's middle of winter, frozen pond, this tree, beautiful sunny day, and I sat there on the ice.
Wow.
Like, until I got into this state of like, and then I was like, what do you want from me? It's kind of like, you know, the universe, God, this divine, you know, what's in the source, and like Ty, my teacher, like really connect, and that was just such a clear sense of like, you know, I want you to be happy, be full, because that's my name, fulfillment.
Oh, fulfillment, brother, fulfillment, beautiful.
Be fulfilled. I don't need you to do anything for me. It's just
that's
great
amazing.
sense of peace, and that was it. I was like, I'm gonna put it down, and that moment is when it, you know. And then I took like another. That's when I came to the clarity, like I'm gonna release these vows, and I spent another 3 months sort of making sure, talking to people, like, is this wise?
So that's beautiful. That's fantastic. So great. I love the way you articulated that. It was so cinematic, being on the ice. You know, and that feeling.
Whoa. I'm gonna die. It was a lot. It was 14. It was 14 years of my life, and I thought I was totally. Tracey, I was like, this is it for me. I'm gonna go the whole. I'm gonna die.
And you've disrobed, but now you're a Dharma teacher, and you're helping a lot of people with trauma, and more people than you probably could have.
In some ways, I have more access to people in different kinds of contexts, and I can't as much hide behind the robes. You know, like, there's a beauty to the robes. I think Ty would say that people often need a symbol. They need something they can have confidence in. So they see someone walking in robes, it gives them faith, you know. And there's something beautiful about that. I don't I have total respect for that. But there's also something about just meeting people as human, not status.
But I can tell you one thing with all sincerity. I feel a lot more comfortable sitting with you with no hair.
When I had too much hair,
the hair that threw me off a little bit. Threw me off. You know, threw me off a little bit. What's it?
I realized when I was shaving my head, you know, that there's a certain vow, a certain energy that we touch shaving. Like, this is a beautiful verse that we say, like, shaving my head completely, I make the great vow today to transform all my afflictions and bring joy and peace to all beings. You know, it's just, it's like this. I was like, I kept missing that. You know, like I'm not doing it. So it's a symbol, you know. And it helps remind me that, like, even though I am not in the robes, that's still my commitment. You know, I keep that. So.
I love it. So it's kind of fascinating, because what got me into meditation, my dad taught and teaches comparative religion at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. So he had me reading the Torah, the Bible, the Quran, Taoist texts. I fell in love with D.T. Suzuki as a young person. Didn't mind beginners. Mind was very important to me. Then I moved to New York in 1992, met this amazing woman in 1996, my wife, Cecile Berensma, was a literary agent, and my wife was the literary agent for Thich Nhat Hanh. So it was fascinating to go from practicing Soto Zen Buddhism to marrying a woman who looked after Thai. And then for a short amount of time, I was on the board of the Brooklyn Zen Center.
Okay, yeah, a good spot.
Right, which is perfect. It's Suzuki's lineage, right? That's Suzuki San Francisco Zen Center, then Brooklyn Zen Center. And do you remember, I don't know if you were here that trip, when Plum Village came to New York and I introduced them to the Brooklyn Zen Center.
I heard about it. I didn't make that trip.
Yeah.
But they're very engaged too, right?
Yeah.
Brooklyn Zen's like
very, very engaged.
Justice, very much about.
Very engaged. And it was an amazing, amazing time. And can you stop for a second?
No, I mean it's rolling, but you can.
Okay, dude. So I want to know if I could tell the story when we gave the nuns when we gave the nuns the ice cream and it got super high off the ice cream. Can I tell you that story?
They're not used to it, right?
They're not used to it, and they were high. Can I tell that story?
Yeah.
Really?
It's fine. It's not like you're saying. I mean, they're just sensitive people.
Okay,
right?
all right, yeah.
Beautiful, right? It's so sensitive. People are so attuned.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
It's like, wow, you give them a little bit of that.
It was incredible. All right. So the nuns are in New York. They're staying at our house. I had to leave the house because the nuns were staying with us. Right. So they needed their own private space.
Right.
So the next
no men in space.
No men in the space. Right. So the next day, we're taking them to meet the members of the Brooklyn Zen Center, which is an active Buddhist practice, but under the Soto tradition. So a bunch of nuns are staying at another hotel. They meet us in Brooklyn. We meet them on 4th Avenue. It's 3 nuns with my wife Cecile and I, and 3 nuns show up on the subway platform to meet us. And they look at us and they say, "We're going to get ice cream."
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, and I know Ty always said, just eat ice cream. Like, don't take life so serious.
Just enjoy your ice cream.
Enjoy your ice cream. And they took it literal. They're like, we're gonna eat ice cream. So it's my wife who's about 6 foot tall. I'm 6'5", and we were 6 4-foot nuns in brown robes. Right? We're walking through Brooklyn, and they know exactly where they're going.
They already mapped it out.
They mapped it out. They got it all figured out. They know exactly where we're going. And we go to the ice cream shop, and we show up, and of course, it's not open yet.
Oh.
So we're standing outside, patiently standing outside, and they're smiling, and the nun is talking to us about all the ice cream shops within a 4-block radius of that place. She's got it down. I'm like, wow, you're really into this ice cream thing.
Yeah, to do this very often.
It was beautiful. So the shop owner shows up. He turns the corner, we see him walking down the street, and he's looking, 6'5" black guy, bald, white woman with 6 nuns in brown robes. And he says, good morning. We're like, good morning, how are you? He goes, well, let me let you guys in. And we go in, and they start trying all the ice creams. They're like, I want to try that one, let me try that one. He's giving them these little beautiful wooden spoons and these little paper cups, and they're tasting all the ice creams. Everything, they try everything, and Cecile and I are there in awe. We're thinking, are we gonna get in trouble for bringing these nuns to the ice cream place? Is this something? It didn't feel right. So then we walk upstairs to the roof of the ice cream shop with a perfect view of Manhattan from Brooklyn, the Manhattan skyline. And these nuns, who we've known for over 15 years, who are very calm, very present, very soft-spoken, are talking a mile a minute.
Giggling.
And they just can't stop talking and giggling. Right. And I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. They are high on sugar right now. And they're talking, I realize like how, you know, the how
idea of what a monastic is like. Oh,
and what sugar does to a pure body, what sugar does to a pure body, to a pure spirit. So they were talking a mile a minute. I said, well, we have to go now. We're 2 blocks away from Brooklyn Zen Center. So on the way to the Zen Center, they're talking, but like ducks in a pond, you know, they've got their robes on, so they're just floating on air because you can't see their feet. But they're talking a mile a minute about everything. And I'm on my, we walk into the Brooklyn Zen Center, I'm thinking, I'm gonna get in trouble. I just got these nuns high on ice cream. They're gonna look at me, they're all wound up, and we're walking to this very peaceful place, the Brooklyn Zen Center. And as soon as the doors open, and you hear the gong, and they meet the other nuns.
They just brought it right back, yeah. Practice.
Right back. They walk in, they say their greetings, their hellos. We walk into the center, and they get on their knees, they put their heads down, and we're in practice.
Pay their respects here. Beautiful, huh?
It was so beautiful, transition. They were there, and it was so amazing.
To change gears is a lot of the practice. Like moment to moment, respond what's appropriate.
And then the next day was my birthday, and we had a beautiful sit. I invited all my friends to the center, and we sat with the nuns and all my friends, and we had a discussion about love, life, relationships.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you basically, would you say 99?
When I
first, I mean, of course you were with your dad, but you met Cecile.
I met Cecile in 1996.
96. So your practice has been transformed. What would you say? How has your practice evolved?
My practice has evolved in a beautiful way. It's continuing to evolve, right? I always consider it's not a finite game. It's an infinite game. Yeah. You know, I see it as like a spinning dervish. It's a whirling dervish. It's always evolving, and I'm always in constant motion and learning and growing. But you know, my practice, as from Ty's practice to me sitting till now, I've loved reading and writing about Buddhism, Taoism, Sufism. You know, I love a Sufi mystic named Hazrat Inayat Khan. A beautiful Sufi mystic, writes about music and vibrations and love. Magical, of course, Rumi. I'm a student of Schopenhauer, Spinoza, Suzuki, Jung, right? Of course, Campbell, Joseph Campbell. But all that time, I realized, up until the age of 50, which now I'm 52, that I felt like my other practices were it was like stand-up philosophy, right? I love talking about it. And one of my teachers told me the minute you catch yourself talking about meditation in your practice out of context, without being asked, it's time to shut up and go meditate.
Gotta get back to work.
Gotta get back to work, right? So my practice has evolved in a way where Soto Zen, mindfulness, till now I've been doing Vipassana meditation, right? And at the age of 50, I took time to do Vipassana meditation. That's kind of cracked me open. And Vipassana meditation is a 10-day silent meditation retreat, which I did in Shelburne Falls, Massachusetts, as taught by S.N. Goenka. And after doing that, I felt like I read the menu, but I've never tasted the food. And sitting there for 16 hours a day, meditating, and dealing with my personal trauma, and
12 days, wasn't it?
It's 12 days.
It's a 10-day.
It's a 10-day sit.
Of a 1 day on either end.
Yes, exactly. 1 day on either end, and that sort of cracked me open. My first Vipassana sit 2 years ago through neuroplasticity, neurons that wire together, fire together, moving energy from head to toe.
You start connecting everything together when you're just there for that length of time.
Yeah, yeah.
You have the foundation, right?
Yes.
To go into that kind of intense practice. Right?
Correct. I don't think I could have done it without that foundation, right? Without having the teachings of Thai, without having the teachings of Soto Zen, and without my life experience. I don't think I could have done that. I could have done it. I could have pulled it off at like a party trick, David Blaine style. I could have David Blained it and got through it.
But you actually used it you understood enough about the practice to use that to really open your trauma. You were talking about trauma. I'd love to hear more about that's the work that I do now, helping people with resolve trauma.
Yeah, it cracked me open in a beautiful way. I say, after that first sit, 10 days, 1 day on each end, 12 days, I felt like I uploaded new iOS software, right? I've got new software. And my new software, the first time, says, we don't eat animals anymore.
Okay.
So since then, I haven't had any meat at all. I cannot physically eat meat. I left Vipassana meditation, came home, I was making lunch for my wife, making her favorite sandwich, tuna fish sandwich, little mayo, a little sriracha, a little salt and pepper, and I went to taste it and immediately got sick, ran to the bathroom and was sick to the point where I couldn't talk for 2 days. My voice was so hoarse. I got that sick. I had to get that, it felt like poison out of my body. And there was no intention. I didn't sit and say my intention is to not eat animals or I care about animals. No, I own 14 hospitality companies. I serve a lot of animals. It's just a change to my body. And the last sit I did, not the last, the second to the last sit I did, I came out and my family met me in Shelburne Falls at a friend's home. And my brother handed me a whiskey, Basil Hayden, my favorite whiskey, and I went to drink it, and I asked my brother, is this bad? He goes, what do you mean is it bad? I'm like, well, it smells bad, it tastes bad. He goes, whiskey can't go bad.
It's whiskey.
It's whiskey, right? So he hands me a beer, I grabbed the beer, and that smelled horrible as well. Then I felt, aha, wow, here we go again. My new software that I updated doesn't allow me to drink alcohol. So I am physically disgusted by the idea of drinking alcohol and eating meat, right? So again, it felt like I've uploaded new stuff. It changes me.
And that's the core part of this kind of deep practice. Something actually shifts in the body, at the body level. I find it fascinating. Yeah. People's bodies can actually change in also a healing way too, right? Like, you talked a little bit about some injuries you had.
Yeah. I was
that's some removal stuff.
I've had chronic pain my entire life. Right? I played football, basketball, baseball. I played rugby. As an adult, I did jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai. Right? I was a broken warrior, right? I was a retired Ronin. Right? I had neck pain, I had 2 torn rotator cuffs. My hip bothered me, my knee bothered me. Every morning for the past 20 years, before I could even brush my teeth, I had to stretch for 15 minutes in the morning, just to get going, So when I first sat down, my first Vipassana, I went to sit and I'm sitting down and I had to put 6 pillows under my butt, 3 pillows under each leg, had to wrap my ankles with my sweater because my ankles rubbing against each other were painful. I basically built a fort for myself. I had a fort, basically sliding glass windows. I had everything sitting down to get comfortable. Because I was in a lot of pain. 2 things, the physical pain of sitting for that long, and I tell people, you have a comfortable bed at home. Right? But after laying down on one side for 45 minutes, you've got to turn over after 45 minutes. So imagine sitting down for 16 hours a day, 2-hour increments. The pain in my neck, my shoulder, my body was unbearable. The second is the mental trauma, the terror of reliving everything you've ever done in your life. That's what happened to me. I felt it's like going into a walk-in closet of trauma, pulling everything out of that walk-in closet, cleaning it up, polishing it, and putting only the good stuff back. That's what my meditation was like for me. And me sitting that entire time was just physically painful. But one thing I got out of it on my 4th day, of sitting and breathing and moving energy from head to toe, as I did that, I would have pain in my shoulder that was unbearable. Felt like a ball of molten lava burning in my shoulder. Then I'd move it to my elbow. That pain would be unbearable. My hip, my knee, my ankle. And every day I would move body and just work that energy, moving that chi through my body. And on the 4th day, as I'm preparing to move energy through my body, I open my eyes and bang, I see my mother.
Wow.
And 4 months prior to that, I was traveling for my 50th birthday. I was in Turkey, I was in Algeria, I was in Morocco, I was in Paris, London, living my best life as a 50-year-old person. I was in a cave in Cappadocia. And I remember saying to myself, wow, look at me, 50 years old. Look what I've done. Yeah. I've got a fantastic life. I'm healthy, everything works. I'm happy, I have beautiful friends. I've got a great life. Look what I've done. I did it on my own. Basically, my mother died when I was 5. Right. My father raised me kind of from abroad. I say my father raised me like Morpheus from the Matrix. He's calling it in.
Tasks.
This left, that left, the other left, like in the Matrix.
Yeah.
So I felt like, I had guidance, but I was on my own since I was 13 years old. Put myself through high school, through college, came to New York, got my MBA, and I kind of did it on my own. It had survived, and I'm in this cave in Turkey, and I'm thinking, wow, I did this all by myself. I've been to both Obama inaugurations. I've got Angela Merkel as a picture of Angela Merkel on my phone as my screensaver. Look at me. 4 months later, I'm sitting down, 4th day of Vipassana meditation, about to move the energy through my body. Bing, I look up, I see my mother. And she looks at me, and she smiles at me, and she takes a sponge, she starts to move it through my body.
Wow.
And she gets to my shoulder, and I go to emote. Instead of pain, it felt beautiful. I felt love. And she moves it through my elbow, then to my wrist, and to my entire body, and like bathes me. Yeah. And she says to me, baby, you said you were alone. She goes, you were never alone. And she goes, I've been with you the entire time. I am you, non-duality.
So beautiful.
She goes, I am you. And she looks at me and I just start bawling, crying.
Wow. Releasing this traumatic energy you've been carrying for so long, right?
Bawling, crying. And she's just there and she moves the sponge through my body. I'm bawling. And she goes, I am you, I'm with you. I am you, I'm with you. I am you, I'm with you. So I'm thinking, duality, non-duality, duality, non-duality, I'm with you. And gong, the bell goes off, right? It's been 2 hours, it's time to get up. So I go to sit up for my pillows. My hips are cracking back into place, my knees, my elbows. As I'm walking back to my room, you hear all my ligaments popping back into place. So it sounds like crabs on the snap crab popping. So I go to my room and I'm like, what was that? I'm like, for the love of God, what was that? And I was thinking, did they put something in my food? Was there ayahuasca? Or because it's 2 in the afternoon. It's in the middle of the day. And
this literal vision. Right.
Literal vision of my mother standing in front of me. So I'm like, that was incredible. I don't know what's going on. Gong, time to go back. So I walk back. I go to sit on my 5 pillows. I sit on them. I take 1 out. I'm on 4. I take another out. I'm on 3. I take another out. I'm on 2. I take another out. I'm on 1. Then I take the pillows from under my knees and I sit down and I'm in lotus position with 0 pain. No pain in my body at all. And I sit, and as I breathe, and prior to that, I was moving the energy, the chi, from head until I felt it, to my nose until I felt it, to my chin. Once I felt the energy on my chin, I would move it through my body, and I would keep moving as I felt the energy. But now it's waving through my body. Moving through my body, and I'm so happy. and my shirt is drenched from crying, but now I'm crying with happiness. And I'm just so connected. And my mother, I don't physically see her anymore, but I feel her.
Now you feel it in the inside.
It's here. So and I just decided to turn my light all the way up. And it spread the metta throughout my body, lights all the way up. And then I took that light and that energy and that metta and I spread it throughout the room and everyone sitting with me. And I turned that light all the way up. And then I took that metta and I put it into the town outside of the building, turned that light all the way up. And then I moved it out into planet Earth and I turned that light all the way up. And gong, 2 hours had gone by. Yeah. And I stood up and that was like, and throughout the rest of my practice, I was in that place of love. And since then, I haven't had any neck pain, any back pain, any knee pain. I have no physical pain at all in my body. And I realized it was trauma.
It was holding. It wasn't actually injured anymore. You're just holding all this energy from what you had to carry your whole. And amazing. It's so common in the work that I do now because a lot of people don't have they don't have the conditions to go do a 10-day retreat. First of all, to do all the preparation, to be ready to face that kind of thing on your own. Yeah. Like you have to have a lot of love on the, it's been, like all these relationships and foundation. Yeah. The trauma work is very similar in some ways to what you've been describing, which I just is fascinating for me to hear that process, like that. It's really the sense that we are alone is what keeps trauma in place. So that so powerful. Really connected, reconnecting somehow.
Yeah. It's been really fascinating, and I said to myself, I'm so happy I found this so early in my life, because now I have it forever. Yeah. Just that knowing, that not thinking, not being a stand-up philosopher talking about these things.
Now it's like this embodied practice, like a living experience. You share it by being there.
Yeah. And I remember hearing somewhere where it's like the Buddha said, don't listen to me, don't listen to Muhammad, don't listen to any other mystics. We were just men like you. Like, be quiet, sit down, and have your own experience. Yeah. No one can rebuttal your own experience.
Get your own insight. Right?
The Buddha sat down for as much time as he sat, and he had his own insight, right? Vipassana means insight, right? Yeah. He had his own insight, and I sat down for 10 days, and I had my own insight, my own experience, and no one can rebuttal that experience. Right? No one can rebuttal.
It physically changed you, and that's just such a powerful experience.
And every day now I feel like I am soaring. I'm like, prior to that I was flapping my wings, and it's pretty to see a bird flapping their wings, right? If you see a bird flying, flapping their wings, you look at it. But when you see a bird of prey, or a bird doing what it's meant to do, and it catches a thermal, and it soars, that's when you stop people in their tracks and say, hey, look at that. Yeah. Look at that bird soar. And everyone stops in their tracks and looks at that bird. And I feel now I'm soaring. And it's effortless. And it's like a whirling dervish again. It's infinite. It's not finite. There's no destination. I'm just soaring, riding these thermals. And that's how I feel after that long journey, from my dad sitting me down, having me count my breaths because I had a lot of energy, to reading about Sufism, Taoism, Buddhism, Schopenhauer, Spinoza, Suzuki, to doing the Soto Zen practice through Brooklyn Zen Center, to meeting and spending a lot of time with you and Plum Village, to the Vipassana, and some of my experience. And now halfway through my life, it feels so beautiful to have that as a fundamental practice. So it's so funny when we talk about practice, I'm like practice is practice for a reason. No one's good at meditation because everyone practices meditation. So I said, if anyone was good at meditation, then Thich Nhat Hanh wouldn't practice meditation, right? It's a constant practice. It's an infinite thing, and you just bring it back. But you had a question about my practice. You mentioned.
Oh, because I know you've been involved in activism here in the city, doing a lot of things in the city. Like, so we talked about, like this idea of Buddhism as an engaged practice, especially with Thich Nhat Hanh, who was like instrumental in stopping the Vietnam War and working with Dr. King, all this stuff, how like practice goes together with service. And you're just talking about how it change your body and change your heart, but I know there's another side to what you've been doing, the ways you've been engaging with the world. I think.
When people ask me how often do I meditate, how long do I meditate in the spirit of Thai and mindfulness, I meditate 24 hours a day. I'm always meditating, whether it's just being, right? When I'm speaking to you, I'm present. This is a meditation. When I'm listening to you, I'm actively listening to you, which is a meditation. Like Thai says, when I'm washing dishes, I'm just washing dishes. That's a constant meditation. But to sit down in the spirit of Soto Zen Buddhism, Shikantaza, just sitting, that's a tonic for me, right? And people ask me, how long do you meditate if you're sitting? I'm like, well, how long can you meditate? I meditate for 1 second at a time. There's no past, there's no future, there's only now. So I breathe in and I breathe out. And I do that over, and I do that over, and I do that over again. So I can only meditate at 1 second at a time.
1 moment.
1 moment at a time.
That's all right.
It's just now. And then if they push me, like,
wait.
I want to know how I do 20 minutes a day. I do 30 minutes a day. And how long do you do? I'm like, well, now we're in competitive meditation.
Comparison mind. Right?
I said,
who's got more?
We're in the competitive meditators. I'm the fastest meditator. But what I do ask, I'm like, well, let me ask you a question. And I'll tell you one thing. First, I meditate until I'm done. I said, how long do you shower? Do you shower for 13 minutes or for 23 minutes? Right? You get in the shower, you do your work, and you leave when you're done, and you know when you're done showering. You know when you're done showering. You know the exact second it's time to get out, and that's how I treat my meditation. So in the spirit of that, prior to George Floyd, in the spirit of meditation and activism, prior to George Floyd, I met with a bunch of friends, an amazing contemporary artist named Hank Willis Thomas. And we met at his studio years ago, about 6 months prior to George Floyd being murdered. Right. And we were just talking about the history of the United States and African American history.
The history of trauma.
The history of trauma and what this world is going through. And we talked about the wide awakes. And we were, waxing poetic about the American wide awakes and who they were and who they would be today. And the wide awakes, of course, were the first abolitionists, one of the first abolitionist groups in the United States of America. One wide awake was John Brown, who was a 6'4", amazing, wealthy young man who inherited land. And when he inherited land, he also inherited slaves and money. And he didn't believe in slavery, and he wanted to abolish slavery. He had a dear friend named Cassius Marsalis Clay, who happened to be Muhammad Ali's great-great-grandfather. And Muhammad Ali changed his name from Muhammad Ali to Cassius Clay because he didn't want the name of a slave owner. But not knowing that, yes, his great-great-grandfather was a slave owner, but he also was abolitionist.
Yes.
And American black men, our names are really traumatizing.
Yeah.
If you think of Tiny Cuts, right? I have the name of my great-great-grandmother's rapist.
Yeah.
I have to sign the name of my great-great-grandmother's rapist whenever I sign my name.
Yeah, it's like in the body somehow again, right?
The trauma is there. It's there on every level of microaggression traumas you have to deal with every day. So the original wide awakes of 1860, John Brown, Cassius Marsalis Clay were dear friends with a gentleman you may have heard of named Abraham Lincoln. And they all went to school together. They were really good friends, and they decided that they were going to help him get into office, and they were going to help abolish slavery. And they did. And they did, and they got Lincoln in office. I'm cutting long story short.
Yeah. They
got Lincoln into office, and he signed the Emancipation Proclamation, and they disbanded. And we all wondered what would happen if they didn't disband, right? And who would they be now? Because who they were Native Americans, they were black freed slaves, they were Chinese railroad workers, and they were Irish indentured slaves, basically. And they were the wide awakes, and they were beautiful. They had these amazing street lamps. They would go to small towns, and John Brown was an amazing orator. We called him the Eminem of his time.
Love it.
Right, he was an amazing orator. He was 6'6", 300 pounds, they say. And you know, at one point they tried to assassinate him in Hartford, Connecticut, in 1861, I believe. And they missed. He jumped off stage, pulled out a utility knife, and ripped the guy's eyes out.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
And after that, they called him Meet John Brown, and all the wide awakes got together to protect him before he went and spoke. So there was a mixed group of amazing humans, and they had these beautiful oil lamps, and they had these waxed cotton long capes to protect them from the oil lamps. So when they came into town, they had this ominous look and feel to them, and they had these lamps, these haunting lamps. Wow. So they're called the wide awakes. They had amazing artwork that they made, wheat pastings of wide awakes' eyes. So Hank Willis Thomas, myself, Black Thought from the Roots, Rashid Johnson, Sanford Biggers, Sir Tony Patrick, a bunch of us got together and said, we're gonna reintroduce the wide awakes to America, and we're gonna make art, we're gonna support each other. After the death of George Floyd, we made the phone call and said, this is our call to action.
Right.
So since then, we have 27,000 active wide awake members.
Nice.
In 20 countries around the world. And we've had.
I'm on that list yet.
Well, you were on that list because you were helping us.
I know.
With our meditation.
I don't know if I gotta get like formally on.
Yeah, we gotta get you.
I gotta get the mailing list.
Yeah, we gotta get you on that list. We gotta get you on that list. And since then, during 2020, we were out in the streets every day.
Yeah.
We had, we had 3,000.
I went to some of the events. I mean, when I was, events, the music.
Yeah, we had 3,000 person processions. We had New Orleans second line bands playing.
Love that.
We marched from the Africa Center on 110th Street in Manhattan. We marched down Fifth Avenue singing, using joy as an act of a resistance, waving our flags. We walked in front of the president's building at the time.
Yeah.
We saluted him with our middle fingers. And we continued to march to Times Square, 42nd Street, where we had a talk, we had a lunch. Then we marched down to Tompkins Square Park. From there, we had performances and dances. I reread Frederick Douglass's.
I was there for that.
You were there for that.
I was at Washington Square Park.
Washington Square Park. That was it.
Yeah.
Where we remixed Frederick Douglass's speech, "What is the 4th of July to a slave?"
Yeah.
Which is a powerful, powerful speech. And then we walked to the Federal Hall. And that was sort of 16-hour day again. It was a meditative practice. We were in spirit.
Right.
We were there. We weren't exhausted. We weren't tired, even though we carried that heavy flag all day. We were in spirit. We're whirling dervish. It was a meditative practice. And at the end of the day, it was like 10 o'clock at night. And we're still singing and speaking and dancing. And we did that virtually every day during 2020. And I don't think I could have done that and done it so long if it weren't for my practice. You know, I'm the sum of my experience. That was all in spirit. It was all mindfulness. It was me sitting down, Soto Zen style, going inside, shutting off my machine, cooling it down. And it was the Vipassana, it was the breathing, it was the Qigong, it was the Tai Chi, it was so I see the world through the aperture of a practitioner of all these modalities. And I think it's definitely made me the person that I am today, And having you here in New York City at this time is amazing. We're hanging out.
Because we don't know what's going to be next.
We don't know what's going to be.
That part about, we do know that it's going to be about love.
Yeah, always about love.
It's going to be about this, like,
that was so beautiful, right?
Yeah.
It's always going to be about love. And like we always said in a Wide Awake, so we're using joy as an act of resistance.
That inspires me when you're talking about that too, because working with people every day, and people are like, oh my gosh, I've got this problem and that problem, and I got like my business or my past trauma, or them dealing with it's just everyone's carrying the wounds, what I've been going for with people a little bit here, what I've been telling people is like, if you're looking at it as like, oh, you were talking about like a zero-sum game, like I got to get this outcome, I got to get this contract to go through, or I need to fix this physically in my body. And it's like, but if you change the name of the game so that you win, if your compassion, if your love increases, right, on the journey, then you're not trying to get that outcome anymore, right?
Beautiful.
Like, it's like I'm meeting this with more compassion myself. Like, do I have to be like get this accomplished, or do I have to be free from pain now? But if I have some pain, then I can generate some compassion for myself, generate some compassion for that person who's aggravating me, or my boss who's like putting pressure on me. Then it's like, oh, you can't lose. You're not gonna die. You're gonna die, right? What are you worried about? You got more compassion at the end, and more love, more, like, you can do that. You can do that. That could be that's like what I decided to do. So I don't know.
I love
it's challenging though to get people into that mind frame. But I do think for me, it's like when we connect, like no one has to be alone. I just love that you were saying that with your mom. It's like, you've never been alone.
Never.
And we are, like, when we have that sense, like, we're not alone, we're connected. I feel like then that's where the love comes in, and that's where it's like, we can't lose. And the outcome, who cares? But we can't lose love. I don't know.
Beautiful. I love that. Yeah. That's fantastic.
Give each other a hug.
There's nothing to add. After that. You nailed it.
Oh, you nailed it.
That was good. That was awesome. That was beautiful, brother. That was really nice.
No, I love talking.
Hi, Jerry Michalski again, StoryThreading for UNFINISHED21. And if my previous StoryThreading adventures were a little much, this one is going to blow your mind, because Tracey and Aaron were fabulous, and there was just endless material here to work with. So let's just look around a little bit. Early on, they mentioned Inayat Khan, who is a Sufi priest and is the founder of Universal Sufism, the Sufi order of Inayati, and father of Vilayat Inayat Khan. That's just a little brief thing in passing. They also mentioned Cassius Marcellus Clay, and I didn't realize this. I had this kind of screwed up in my brain. I had Cassius Marcellus Clay in my brain as an abolitionist and an eccentric person, but I kind of had him in a way that looked like he was the father of Cassius Marcellus Clay, who is actually the father of Muhammad Ali, whose birth name was Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr. But it turns out that Cassius Marcellus Clay Sr. was named after this politician by his father, Herman Heaton Clay. So Cassius Marcellus Clay, the politician, is white and an abolitionist, but kind of not quite sure, because Muhammad Ali drops his name and takes a Muslim name when he converts to Islam, and feels like his original name is in fact a slaveholder name. So there's a whole digression there for a minute here, but kind of worth going through it. And also, this conversation caused me to go fix things that weren't actually quite right in my brain. Early on, they talk about Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a personal hero of mine. I never got to meet him, but several friends of mine went to Plum Village and spent time on retreat there. And one of my favorite ways of being in the world, which is going to cut in now into some of this narrative, comes from Thich Nhat Hanh. And this is the idea of deep listening and loving speech. It connects up to listening well, but this is a particular way of being in the world. And so I've connected deep listening to common themes across the Unfinished 21 sessions, but not so much the other. And Thai also, there's also a lot of other really interesting things and ways in which Thai was connected into this session. Let's go back to Tracey and Aaron. Here we go. And in fact, Tracey, let me go and actually talk about Tracey and Aaron separately, as I'm doing each time. So Tracey has his own agency, is a practicing Buddhist, and is married to Cecile Berensma, who is a literary agent and comes up in the session early because she was Thai's literary agent, which is really interesting. So there's sort of loops upon loops here. Then Aaron, who is also known as Brother Fulfillment, is a kind of retired Buddhist monk who is now a Dharma teacher. And here's his Twitter account at Brother Fulfill. Tracey also mentioned Vipassana sit, and Vipassana was already in my brain. I have never done a Vipassana sit, but it's been on my to-do list for a long time. He also mentioned S.N. Goenka, who is kind of the fellow who recorded the original meditations that are part of the Vipassana process and started this whole thing. You can actually go do Vipassana for free at a Vipassana center around the world. You just need to find a schedule and go to it. And then Tracey also mentioned a kind of meditation called Shikantaza, which I had never heard of. I knew about Soto, which is the school that it comes from in Japanese Buddhism, but I didn't realize that Shikantaza was sort of like sitting Zen or Zazen in Buddhism. These are kind of different versions of similar sorts of things, but in Shikantaza you don't have an object, you just sit and meditate in emptiness, which was really interesting. I put that, you'll see that I also put Shikantaza under types of meditation. This may entertain some people. Here's hugging meditation, insight meditation, Kamantana, which comes from the Thai forest tradition, which is interesting in and of itself, is part of Theravada Buddhism, and here are some practitioners of the Thai forest tradition. And I don't know, I couldn't tell you a thing about Ajahn Sao Kantathilo, but that he's in my brain and we can go back and look around. But types of meditation is also under meditation, of course, which is broadly about it's a psychotechnology and relaxation technique. It's a discipline that gives you a heightened state of awareness, and so on and so forth. This is all about meditation. But also you may be amused to know that at some point years ago I realized I had many types of thoughts. So I created a meta thought called just types. And so here's types of advertising, types of addiction, types of activism. So if I go to types of addiction, for example, there should be process and substance addictions. And then under substance addictions, you should find drug addictions and alcohol and all those kinds of things. But if I go back to types, you will note that these are alphabetic. And I'm just going here, well, types of starts most of them. This is just types of A. This is a scroll bar down here. So all of these are types. Types of band, types of bird, types of brake, types of doctor, types of engine, types of knot, types of knife, types of photography, types of pasta. I've just been squirreling things away in this brain for 23 years, and this is what happens. So let's go back to Tracey and Aaron, because they said a lot of super interesting things. And this is all plot spoilers for their conversation, so if you haven't watched the video yet, please watch it before listening to the rest of this. So one of the things that hit me really hard was when Tracey says, toward the end of the session, American black men, our names are really traumatizing. And in particular, he says, I have the name of my great-great-grandmother's rapist. And that's just... I just had to sit with that. That hit me really hard, and I was trying to figure out what that meant in his life and how that goes. He also talked about his Vipassana sit. So he, when he had his first Vipassana sit, he left the sit a vegetarian and a teetotaler. And then also, I should connect this over here because on day 4 of Tracey's sit, his passed away mother came and sponged away his pain. And he had chronic pain. So let me figure out, here we go. I can connect it to Tracey's athletic pursuits left him with chronic pain, which I already had there, obviously from my notes. But this was a really significant and riveting moment in the story of Tracey's life. And that made me realize that he was an athlete. He did all sorts of sports. He got beat up a lot. He also did rugby, which is a particularly punishing sport because it's like football without the pads, only among sort of gentlemen. And it made me realize that his injuries weren't tissue that needed to mend, but in much of his body, joints that were holding pain. And so there's this whole notion, here's back to the thought about their conversation, there's this notion that our bodies hold trauma. And the most famous book on this is called The Body Keeps the Score, Brain, Mind, and Body and the Healing of Trauma by Bessel van der Kolk, who is an expert on trauma. In fact, I have a thought with lots and lots and lots of material called Healing from Trauma, where I have other people who are experts on trauma, like Jim Gordon, Irene Lyon, Gabor Mate is here somewhere. Where are you, Gabor? There he is. Kathy Kane, Peter Levine. I have a lot of things on Gabor Mate. So here he is. Here's his son, Aaron Mate. Here are a bunch of videos about Gabor explaining how trauma works. And I recommend, unfortunately, I recommend all of these. One of my favorite experts in trauma died long ago. She was a Swiss psychotherapist named Alice Miller, who wrote a famous book called Drama of the Gifted Child. Here we go, The Drama of the Gifted Child, Das Drama des begabten Kindes. And a very early girlfriend of mine introduced me to this book and to Alice Miller's thinking, and changed my brain, changed my mind many, many years ago. So end of this little digression. Let's go back to the conversation and pick up another thread. He also talked about the wide awakes, and I had the wide awakes in my brain. In fact, last week, I had a conversation with my friend Aaron Huey, who is a photographer and who spent a bunch of time with the Lakota Sioux up in their reservation and so forth, who has been involved in a wide awakes revival recently. So the question, who would the wide awakes be now, was really, really interesting to me. But the wide awakes were a youth movement way back in the day that helped get Abraham Lincoln elected. They were abolitionists. They wore oilskins and carried lamps, which were kind of distinctive. And this whole thing is really interesting. So here's a New York Times article titled "A Civil War Political Movement Reawakens, Complete with Capes." So I was thrilled that the wide awakes were playing a role in this conversation, because movements are really important right now. We're busy trying to figure out what should we do next, right? And movements can be pretty negative. Adolf Hitler comes to power because of movements as well, and because of a lot of other things that happened before him. But there are a lot of really positive movements happening in the world right now, and I'm thrilled about those. Then there's a fun anecdote about nuns who had been abstaining from sweets and all sorts of things and got buzzed eating ice cream and having the sugar in ice cream. But I think I'll let this conversation sit at this point. There's plenty more about Chi and an artist named Hank Willis Thomas, who I did not have in my brain but added and went and researched some about him. Here's a video of him talking about how artists should be working in society's subconscious. And that is a talk he gave at 99U, and I have a bunch of other 99U talks listed in here. So, Jerry Michalski again, StoryThreading for Unfinished 2021, and happy to be on this journey with you.